A lot of people assume church is for people who already know what they believe, people who are confident, committed, and spiritually certain. But what if that picture is wrong? What if belonging is not something you earn once your beliefs are fully in place, but part of a way faith begins to take shape? Welcome to episode 3 of Church for People Who Don't Like Church. I'm Matt Oldham.
And I'm Anthea Ratton. Hello.
Hello, Anthea Ratton. How's your holiday? You've been away?
I have been away. I've been in Geneva, or just outside Geneva, with two very old friends of mine. If you're listening, Andrea and Claire, shout out to you. It's been a really nice time here, just connecting. We first met, we all lived together when we were in our 20s, so we've known each other.
10 years ago.
10 years ago, I know, yeah. And one of them lives in America, so we haven't seen her for a very long time, so it's very special.
And you're fully refreshed, physically, spiritually, mentally?
I am, yeah. There's something about being with people who know you really well, so you can laugh and joke and eat and talk and walk, and yeah, it was a good time. Good time.
Well, fantastic. Well, that's actually very apt because we're going to talk about belonging today. But to kick off, in the last couple of episodes, we've started by talking about something we don't like about church. I thought we'd turn it on its head in this episode, and I'm going to ask you, tell me one thing you love about church and that you miss if you're not there on a Sunday.
Okay, I think it's the people. It's the sort of ragtag bunch of folk who turn up on a Sunday from all different shapes and sizes, and the way that then together we co-create this space where we can experience something deeply spiritual, and I wouldn't find that anywhere else.
I think that's very true. I think there is a real... It's like if you work, you tend to work with a similar type of people, or if you're in a club, they tend to be the same, but we have such a wide variety of people, and I think that's great. So I think one of the things I would say I love about church is when you come and you arrive and someone just gives you a massive big hug. I'd love that bit about it. And again, you're right, you don't get that at many places. I was saying, only at churches, but not at many places.
Not at many places, yeah.
Cool. Right, so we've got a topic to discuss, which is, can you belong before you believe? So how do we start? Maybe we should start, but I guess not that long ago, maybe even only one generation ago, there was a lot less sort of questioning in society of authority. So teachers, police, government, and I would argue church was sort of an unquestioning thing, but we're much more questioning these days, possibly even cynical. Are we conditioned to be skeptics?
It's a good question, isn't it? We're definitely conditioned differently than we were, and I think our generation and definitely our parents' generations beyond that, as you said, education, well, I mean, every area, workplaces, places you need to be told or learn things, were very much this is it, this is the way. At school you were just taught and told stuff. I wonder whether it's not that we're skeptical, but that we've actually been taught, or younger people now are taught to have their own minds and to ask their own questions, which I think is actually more in line with much more ancient ways of learning and experiencing the world, which was all about asking questions. The rabbinic way was about the rabbi expecting you to ask a question, not just sit passively and take in information. So yeah, are we skeptical, or are we just open and able to do our own thinking now?
I think that's a good perspective. I like that idea that it's because I sort of think that questioning authority has been seen as a bad thing, but there's good and bad in it, I guess. But a lot of it is really positive, that we are sort of searching a little bit more as a society. We are less likely just to take what something is said without questioning ourselves, and I think there's some positives in that. So I guess faith then is no longer black and white, and I guess the question is, as a church, what do we do with the grey? It doesn't really feel like church as a whole, I'm making broad generalizations here, is a safe place for the curious. You either believe and you go to church, or you don't believe and you don't go to church. But what about those who are in the middle?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good point. This sort of sense of you're either in or you're out. On what if you're not sure? I think at RCM, our church, I think we very much want to give and try to give space to the grey. And I don't know, do we arrive at a faith, Matt? You know, do we know when we've arrived? Have you arrived? Have I arrived? I think faith or belief is very much an ebb and flow anyway.
Yeah.
And I suppose we might decide or arrive at that we believe in God or divine or other, and then we might decide Christianity is a way to explore that rather than another faith tradition. But I think it's important to recognise and give permission to people who've been around for years and years, particularly as we were just talking about people in generations where we were told what to believe, that to give them space to question and not just accept. Because life is tough, right? And things happen and it causes you to question things you've been told. So I think what I'm saying is I think there are a lot more people who are part of faith communities who are in that middle, who are in a grey space but haven't been given any permission to be in that. So if you're listening and you often think, wake up and think, I don't know if I believe in God today, that's great, that's fine. Please talk about it. Don't pretend that you do just because you think you should. But in the answer to the question, I hope church, especially through Church Marlow and this podcast, is a space where we can work things out together. Knowing that faith or belief, I think it kind of changes and evolves as we do that with other people. So yeah, I think we do need to make sure that there's a safe space here for the curious, but that we all stay curious.
But just to push back a little bit, because I think you're right that there are people in our church community who are on a journey, and lots of people talk. It's almost a bit of a cliche to say I'm on a journey, and views can change over time. And I think there's lots of people at the moment going through that process, but they start from a foundation of some element of belief. And I think that's great. If you're in church, you can sort of question things from a foundation of belief. But if you're before that, if you sort of haven't tipped over into some sort of, I'm just not sure that most churches are the type of place that people who have not made a decision or have not, just want to explore things, I'm not sure that's a place that is for them.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you come in with too many questions, you could be seen as being disruptive or disrespectful or things like that. Problem. You may feel judged. You may not fit in very well, and you may not come back. And the way in which church can be presented, a typical service or gathering goes. If you don't fit in with that, what do you do?
Yeah. And then I guess this thing happens that you don't feel that you belong, and you don't benefit from that idea of belonging, which is so much part of being in part of a community, in a church community. So I don't know, I think that's the thing that I'm struggling with a little bit, is this idea about belonging before you believe. But then, I guess to a certain extent that sort of assumes that belonging is something that people want, and I guess we need to make the case for belonging. About we can't just assume that people want to belong to our church or our church community. So let's make the case. Why is belonging good for you?
Why is it good for me? And I think you and I are different on this, because obviously I've been in church, as people have heard in other episodes, for all my life. I've never not been part of a church community, so I've always belonged in one. But it's felt different in different spaces, whereas you've had a much more not part of experience. I think it's not good to be alone. Not good to be alone too much. I think in an inclusive, accepting church space, like I hope ours is, that there are many different ways to belong. It's not just one way, and I think that's a little bit unique if you can make that work. I think being in a community, as we sort of said in the beginning of the things that we like about church, is that a good community holds you, and it loves you, it believes in you, it roots for you. Several people have said to me recently, I wouldn't be here, Anthea, if it wasn't for this church, and how people looked after me and cared for me and prayed for me. And literally they mean that their lives may have ended. So you could argue, well, any good community could do that, and there's an element of truth in that. But I think working something out together is much easier than doing it on your own.
Yeah, I think there are some unique things that churches can do. So a really good example is when my mum and dad moved to Preston from London. I was still a toddler. My mum was very, very ill, and she lost a child in childbirth, lost a kidney, had last rites read to her in church, in hospital, and they'd only just started going to this church, and they immediately got, the classic church thing of rota for food, for cleaning, for this type of stuff. And I think you're right, you can get that in other communities with neighbourhoods or this, that and the other, but it's rare. But it's not rare in church. I think it's quite common that happens, and I think that is a real amazing thing about belonging, and I think it can help crystallise your faith. If you think, well, if I can rely on these people, why are these people so reliable? It's because they're relying on something else. So I think that
absolutely, yeah. Why are these people like this when they don't even know me? Why are they so interested in me? And it isn't because we want something from somebody. It's because they're loving on people in the way that we believe that's what would like us to do, I suppose. So yeah, absolutely, it's an amazing rule.
Yeah. So I still feel, though, that there's a chasm between this idea of belonging and faith. It still feels like you can't have one without the other. You can't belong without faith. Is that true?
Oh, I don't know. I think you can belong without faith or belief. How long that sustains, I don't know. It's like, I'm part of a book group. I have been for years and years now. Now, if I didn't read books, I could have popped along there a bit, but eventually I would feel awkward and feel like I ought to read these books. I can get away with not reading the book occasionally, and that's fine. The space carries me along. But eventually, it is about doing this book reading thing together. So, believing and belonging.
Yeah, it's not a social club. I know we said the thing that some parts of this community you can get elsewhere. I remember when I used to move as a young bloke, used to go and join a cricket club, and immediately you've got a community of people who share something with you. But I guess it would be weird if people came to church because they loved the community and they loved Maria's cakes, but they had no interest in following faith or finding faith or interest in Jesus. So I think that's a difference. That's why I'm not sure you can have both.
Yeah, and I mean those cakes are good, and they are a good reason to pop in. Although they're not there every Sunday, so you'd have to keep coming until you found a cake. But I don't think, you're right. I don't think that's a reason to keep coming. But for me, I believe if you will encounter love, I believe there will be encounters that will happen for you in different ways if you're part of a faith community. And yeah, eventually, nobody's going to make you do this. Well, I hope in our sort of church they wouldn't. I think in other churches they would perhaps push you a bit, but eventually you will make a decision. Is this for me? Is this Christianity thing something I want to pursue, and deepen in and find ways of understanding better? And that might be, I've been coming all these Sundays, but now I want to talk to people in smaller groups, or we'll have lunch with these people, or find out a bit more. Yeah.
I like this idea that you talked before about, though, about this sort of rabbinical tradition of questioning and, you know, arguing to really find things. And I don't think we do that a lot in our in most churches. Traditionally, I don't think it's a place for sort of argument and debate. It's more about you listen, you receive from the front. I sort of reflecting on that, in the early church, the people weren't bound by sort of rules and dogma and tradition of church. They were just there because they were curious, and that sort of curiosity would have been the thing that drove people there. And now I sort of feel that curiosity is gone from church. You've got past curiosity and you're in. So I think it's an observation. I'm not sure how we change that, but I think we need to encourage the idea of questioning and maybe also just be okay with the fact that people haven't got everything sorted. And it was like, what was it, that thing you sent me earlier before about the squirrels and the ducks?
Oh yeah, I haven't got all my ducks in a row. They're squirrels and they're at a rave.
That's it. That's the type of stuff. But I'm not sure that's typical from churches, that people are from the front saying, this is what I think, but I'm not sure. What do you think? I'm not sure how tenable that is to have sort of such an open discussion, but I don't know. I'm just keen to for people. I know people are curious, and I know that they're not getting questions answered, or they're not feeling that they can ask questions at churches.
And I think, and I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and I haven't done any reading or anything on it, but I think people's spiritual experiences can be very different depending on how they are wired. So I'm really interested in different personality types, things like the Enneagram, the Myers-Briggs personality inventory. I think they're really good. And if you know your type, or you know what kind of a person you are, then you will experience things differently. So for example, I'm very emotionally wired, so I know I experience things through my emotions. But my husband is not, and other people in my life are not. And so how do they experience God? Because it's not going to be like I do, or a spiritual feeling. It won't be a spiritual feeling, it might be a thought or an idea. And I think it's very easy in churches to experience everything as some sort of this emotional thing, but I don't think it is. And I don't think that is how everybody experiences God. So I'm interested in that, and I'm concerned that people like me might exclude people not like me because they're not having the same experience as me. Does that make sense? Yeah,
it does. Basically what you're saying is we should have a test before we go into church, some sort of Myers-Briggs, and you sort it into different areas. So if you're this particular type, you go in the corner and have a theological debate with Paul. If you're another type, you go in that corner over there and cry. If you're something else. But I think, only joking, but I do think you're right that what is a real turn on for some brain types is a complete turn off for others, and getting that mix is tricky, I guess. And I do think churches do put blockers in the way of curious and the uncommitted, rather than sort of big signposts and question marks. But maybe that's my opinion. I'm not sure.
And I think there's lots of reasons for that. It can feel very threatening to have lots of questions asked if you're in a very certain place. I was thinking as well about you can look at groups in different ways, and you can think about groups in terms of systems theory of being closed or open. A very closed group or family group is one where they don't have much coming in from the outside. They know that they do know that this is the way. There's lots of particular rules, regulations, certainties. So it's not easy to get in unless you have to sign up to all of that. Whereas an open system is much more porous. There's lots more coming and going and inning and outing, and maybe there isn't an idea of an in and out was just a thing. And so it's much easier to come in there and be part and go away again and flow around. So I think the idea is to be open, but I think it's very easy to become closed because we feel threatened ourselves. If you say to me prayer doesn't work, for example, well, what does that mean? Have I built my faith on a house of cards? What's going to happen if I start taking things away? Will I have nothing? I don't believe you will have nothing, but a lot of people get very scared.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. How do we then get a balance between being a welcoming community, bearing in mind that people have different ways of expressing or questioning, so being welcoming but with that desire for people to find faith, so you're sort of not saying, oh, welcome, please come in, you don't have to believe anything here, but read the scripture. or people coming in who are curious and they're sort of becoming a project rather than just, so taking away the fakery around it and just being welcoming. I think it's fine balance, isn't it?
I think it is a fine balance, and I've certainly been to churches where people eye you because you're new, and who are you? Are you a Christian? Are you doing the right thing? It's you feel judged. You feel, am I doing the right thing? And if you're a bit of a people pleaser like I can be, then it's very easy just to be chameleon-like and just say all the right things so you can carry on being there. I think it's about us who are in faith communities just being authentic. I think just being authentic about who we are and what our spirituality means to us, and not worrying too much about what others are doing. I need to be authentic about my spirituality and what that means to me, and how it's rooted, how it's sourced. And yeah, that might be because I'm reading the Bible in a certain way, and that might be really helpful for somebody else to know about that. But it might not be. So it's not for me to impose. It's just for me to be, I suppose. I don't know, what do you...
I think also just making it very clear in how we present ourselves that it's okay not to have exactly the same structures of belief that we have. I think where churches are very, very good at putting ourselves into lots of separate boxes. You believe that, therefore you can't be here, or you believe that, therefore you need to be over there. And it's almost like a sorting hat type sort of exercise, as opposed to a fully welcoming exercise. What do you feel, or what should a healthy church feel like then, perhaps from the perspective of someone who is curious and not committed, or visiting for the first time and has just got questions? What should it feel like?
I don't. Some of me doesn't really know the answer to this, and I suspect we might have different answers. And again, it depends on who you are, what it should feel like. But I think it should feel welcoming. It should feel open. But I think it should be real. So, like we've talked before, haven't we, about, for example, all churches say they welcome everybody, and yet some churches have very particular views and belief systems around marriage. So I think you need to be upfront about that, and if that's what you believe, that's what you believe, and if that's something that would make it very difficult not to be part of the church, like everybody here needs to always wear orange jumpers. Well, I don't like orange. Well, I'm sorry, but we do wear orange jumpers here. That kind of thing. I'm just using a more neutral example. But but I think also it's about not being pushy. It's about not being judgy. It's about being curious about anybody who's part of us, and understanding that people will settle down into different places to belong. There are people who come to church every week, sit at the front, do everything, part of everything. There are people who come occasionally, and I know their name, I don't know where they live, I don't know much about them, because they're quiet people. And they come in, and there are people who come every week and like sit right at the back and then scurry away again quite quickly, because that's how they use the space. So I do believe there's a different way of belonging in churches. And there are some people who would say they were part of the church, you never see them on a Sunday, but you'll see them in a small group during the week, or walking with one friend. So does church equal being part of the church? Does it mean you have to be there every Sunday? No, I don't think it does. I think some people have to be, otherwise we can't have a Sunday. But it's a rambling answer.
No, I think that's really interesting. I think a lot of this stuff resonates with me. As I said, on my journey, that I was peripheral for a long time. I was one of those people on the edges, and I think over a period of time, having more of a sense of belonging was helpful, because it sort of created the environment that I could ask the questions that I needed to. So I think, that belonging part of it was really important. It wasn't everything about it, but it was an important part. So thanks for that. I think that was interesting. Some good perspectives. Some takeaways. How can we summarise? I think some of them would be making the point that belonging is not always like the reward at the end. Maybe it's part of a journey. You don't need to fake certainty to be welcome. Just come as you are, and hopefully churches can meet you as you are. A healthy church has room for questions, and questioning is good, and we should be not threatened by anything. Anything else you want to add into that?
And if you've been in church for a long time and you suddenly have questions, that's okay too. And it's okay. Faith shifts and changes, belief shifts and changes, and that's okay.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Anthea. I think we should wrap it up there. Once again, great to talk to you. Great to have you back, and we'll be speaking again soon.
Absolutely, and I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's listening in, and we do really want to include you if you're listening. So if you've got a question or a reflection or a thought on things that we've talked about, email, message us, get hold of us, and then we can read them out and think about them here. So that'd be good.
100%. We could do a live Q&A.
You do. Maybe a bit scary, but definitely I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on this. We're just chatting the chat, but you might be listening and think, oh yeah, that's interesting, I think this, and we can include that here.
Fantastic. Good stuff. Speak to you again soon.
Okay, thanks Matt. Bye.